Hi there. Welcome to Veritas Populi. My name is Dan Meredith. I'm the producer and host of the program. Today we're going to be discussing a subject that is particularly close to my heart. I'm very interested in constitutional rights and especially the Second Amendment. We're going to be talking today about the idea of constitutional carry and specifically in the state of Tennessee. We have three special guests today. We have at the far end of the table, we have John Harris, who is a practicing attorney, and his volunteer position is he's the executive director of the Tennessee Firearms Association. We also have Richard Archie, who is the West Tennessee director of the Tennessee Firearms Association. And then we also have Mark Green, who is a state senator in the state of Tennessee. Welcome, all of you, to the program.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Okay, let's start out a little bit about history. A lot of our viewers, many of our viewers maybe, might not know about the history of constitutional carry and what the Second Amendment really says. If the guys in the control room can put up something about the Second Amendment and what it says, this isn't something that is new or outlandish, right? The Second Amendment tells us that for the security of a free state, a well-regulated militia is necessary for the security of a free state, and because of that, or for that, the right of the people to keep and bear arms should not be abridged or infringed. Now, a lot of people look at that and they think, well, that's talking about the Army or the National Guard. They look at that well-regulated part, and I'm just going through a little bit of that. Well-regulated, and they think that means there needs to be generals and captains and colonels, and there needs to be laws. But that well-regulated just means it needs to be smoothly running, a smoothly running militia. Those of us old people know that if you're regular, that means you're smoothly running. That's what that word means originally. So that's all it means. To have a smoothly running militia, you need to have the people be able to say, I've got some arms. If we were sitting here and someone were to yell, hey, there's shots being fired, and the militia or us be called together, we need to be able to get our guns and go out and defend the place. That's what the Second Amendment says, isn't it? A well-regulated militia being necessary for the people to be free, we need to be able to call the people out, and in order to do that, we need to have arms. We need to be able to go home or go to our car or whatever, get our weapon, be called together. That's all it is. This isn't something outlandish or new. Tell me what's going on in the state of Tennessee about this. I think we've got, Mark, you presented this or carrying this bill for constitutional carry, we call it. What does that mean?
Well, I can tell you what it means to me.
Okay.
To me, it means that an individual, in accordance with our Constitution, has a right to have an arm, weapon, and that they have every right to do that, and that right is not to be infringed by the government, meaning all of the encumbrances and regulations that are placed on an individual are an encumbrance. They're an infringement on that right. So I believe that each individual citizen has a right to keep and bear arms. And what really is important when it comes to this discussion and why we use the term constitutional carry, you have to kind of take the Constitution, I take the Constitution, in the intent that it was written. I think of it as a legal document, and John is an attorney and he can tell you probably a little bit more about this, but whenever a judge is looking at a legal document, part of how he's supposed to look at that is what was the intent when it was written. Things change, time changes, but what was the intent of the document when it was originally written? Mm-hmm. If you look at our Constitution, it was written right after we overthrew a tyrannical government. The intent of that document, the intent is that the people would be armed to protect themselves from, crime, but more relevant at the time, at when that document was written, to protect themselves from government, from tyrannical government, mm-hmm. and to defend against foreign countries we are a part of that defense. Our great country at its founding, it took the people to defend. They were the last line of defense. And I'm concerned and I don't know how much you want me to keep rambling right now, but
that's why you're here.
I'm concerned for our country right now. We've sort of, as a nation, in its defense, gotten back to where we were at our beginning. Again, it was the citizenry, the armed citizenry that were the last line of defense of the country back when we were founded. Well, we're there again. ISIS is tweeting now, I read the other day, 200,000 tweets a day.
Wow.
And they can do 38 separate propaganda events per day. So the image of a person having their head cut off is one type of propaganda that they do, and then the next one is one of their fighters playing with a puppy.
Wow.
You know, so they do these multiple, and they're trying to recruit, and they're trying to radicalize right here in the United States. We know that the CIA, the FBI, the NSA, all of these three-letter organizations cannot protect us from the lone wolf. They have admitted it.
Right.
We're back to where we started. The last line of defense is an armed citizen. And government needs to get out of the way of that citizen being armed and defending this nation and the communities where they live.
And the armed citizen is us. We're just regular people.
Us.
Right. And you know, it'd be a surprise. The people that are watching don't know a lot about us. I've just introduced us. But it might surprise people to know, you know, if you're sitting out there thinking, but you don't know anything about this. People get hurt. People get shot. People get killed. Accidental injuries. People get. What do you do for a living?
I am
besides being a senator.
I'm a physician and I manage a company.
So
I'm an ER physician, so I see the gunshot wounds when they happen.
You care about people.
Both when it's intentional harm caused to another, and when it's accidental.
I'm a registered nurse. I've taken care of people that have gotten shot. I've been in pre-hospital. I've been in hospital. You've taken care of people. So for those that say, well, you don't know what it's like to see a gunshot wound, I do. Yeah, you do.
I do.
These folks, John, you're an attorney. You've worked with people that have gotten hurt. We're people that know people. It's not just, you know, this ethereal, book stuff. There are people out there that get hurt, and there are people out there that try to hurt people. And there are people with guns that defend people. You know, who was it just a few years ago, president of the NRA, that said the only way to stop a bad person with a gun
is a good guy with
a good person with a gun.
Is a good guy with a gun.
And I guarantee you, if someone comes in your house, you're going to dial the phone, and you're not going to call a social worker or a plumber. You're going to call a police officer. And why do you call a police officer?
Because they got guns.
Because they got a gun. You're going to call someone because he can come and help you.
Yeah, and if you're going to wait on the fire department to come, your house is going to be, you know, in most cases, they can't get there in time. That's why you have a fire extinguisher. Yeah. Right? So I look at a gun just like I look at a fire extinguisher. Very fortunate when that Somali refugee in Ohio State tried to run over those kids and chop them up with a machete. There was a cop right there. Yeah. Well, there aren't cops right there. Yeah. There wasn't a cop right there in Chattanooga. There wasn't a cop right there in Orlando. And the enemy is out there, and they are trying to hurt us. There are criminals out there that are trying to hurt people, and we can find many, many instances where good guys with guns stopped bad guys with guns.
Yeah. Tennessee Firearms Association. You guys are very involved in Tennessee Firearms, and I'm a member of the Tennessee Firearms Association, a life member. A few months ago, I didn't have any money, couldn't keep my bills paid, and I said, look, this group is worth it. So I ponied up the money and said, I'm going to become a life member, because this is a group that, unlike some firearms organizations, they don't back down. They say this is what we want, and we're going to fight for it. Tell me about the current situation with constitutional carry nationwide and Tennessee, and maybe what the difference is. How many states have the right to walk around with a firearm just because you're a citizen?
Well, you have right now, depending on whether you call it concealed constitutional carry or open constitutional carry. Basically, there are 30 states in the United States right now that allow its citizens to carry openly without a permit, without you having to take a class, without you having to have a background check. Basically, what they say is if you can possess a firearm, then you're able to carry one. All the contiguous states with Tennessee, with the exception of Georgia, have constitutional open carry.
So you just put a holster on, put a weapon in it, walk down the street.
Or in your hand.
Yeah.
Or in your hand. Okay. That's correct.
Now these states that have that, do you find shootouts in the streets, bloodbaths, all these things that the progressives talk about.
I think that it would be pertinent to turn on the news every morning, and you, as well as I, understand that the liberal media can paint any one group with a negative brush. They will. And you didn't see anything coming out of Kentucky or Mississippi or Alabama.
And those states
today
have
open carry.
Right.
Open
I
carry.
travel into Kentucky all the time.
Now, what we're talking about, though, in the bill that we've got going this year in Tennessee is constitutional concealed carry.
Okay.
Depending on how you define that, it's between 13 and 15 states. Some states allow you to conceal carry outside of municipal areas. California even, we think of them as a terrible bastion of horrible gun control laws. But when you're away from major cities and you get up into the rural areas of Northern California, it's legal for its citizens to carry a firearm concealed without a permit. So what we're looking to do is to return to Tennessee what was our original right in the 1796 Constitution that said the citizens of this state have a right, or the freemen of this state have the right to keep and bear arms for their common defense. That's what we're trying to do, is to go back to that without requiring you to pay a tax to the government to enjoy a right that God gave you.
So that's, in essence, that's what you're saying is what a permit is. You don't have to have a permit to go to church, right?
That's correct.
And that's a First Amendment right, to go to church and freedom of religion. You don't have to have a permit to have the right to
Vote.
for what?
Vote.
To vote. You have to have a permit. In fact, that was ruled unconstitutional.
That's correct.
To freedom of the press, if you want to get on the internet. So all of these other rights, you don't have to have a permit, but the right to keep and bear arms, they say, well, yeah, we're gonna charge you to do that. So, what's the status in the state of Tennessee, John?
Tennessee's is a paradox of sorts. A lot of people, including Tennesseans, think that we're a great state for gun owners. And that may have been true in the 1700s and maybe in the 1800s, but as we have gone through an era of political correctness, that's changed. And the big changes really started in the 1960s. And what happened, unfortunately, in Tennessee, particularly with the rewrite of the criminal code in 1989, was Tennessee created a premise in its law that basically says it's a crime for a citizen to possess a firearm. That's the premise under current Tennessee law. And when you look at that whole set of statutes, what you come away with is a whole bunch of defenses to a crime. So it's a defense to have one at your home, statutory defense. It's a statutory defense to have one at your business, your place of work, if you have a permit, if you're a police officer. That's a statutory defense to a crime.
That's crazy, but that's
So
the
it's
way
a
it's
crime
That's the
to
way
have
it
the
is.
weapon, but
And
it's
so-
a defense if you have a weapon
Yes,
here. It's a
yes,
defense
that's
if you have a
exactly
weapon
right.
here.
under each of the various circumstances, there's a defense. That's so for you to possess a weapon, you're qualifying under a defense. So the overall assumption is that it's illegal, and then we're going to give you all of these listed exceptions.
Yeah, and we're excited about the fact that Senator Green has agreed to carry this bill, and in the House it's Representative Andy Holt. And in the past, others have carried similar bills and are carrying similar bills this year. We got Senator Beavers, Michael Van Huss, Judd Matheny. The core conservatives in the General Assembly are all behind this. And what they're saying is, folks, it's wrong that the basic premise in Tennessee is it's a crime to be a gun owner. Look at the Constitution. So what we need to do, and what Senator Green's bill does, is it says it's legal for you to own a gun. It's constitutionally right for you to own a gun, but it's wrong for you to misuse it and to abuse it. And that's what we're going to punish. Not possession, not ownership, but abuse and misuse.
So you can carry it as long as you behave. You're good.
As long as you can legally acquire the weapon, you can legally carry the weapon.
And if you misuse it, that's the crime.
That's the crime.
That's
Not
the
just
crime.
possessing or carrying it, which makes sense.
And frankly,
right?
for most Tennesseans, go to rural Tennessee, that's what they think the law is now. They don't think they need to have a permit to have it in their farm. But technically, it's a defense that you have it at your farm.
And that, I think, and I really appreciate John mentioning that, because I think as people look at the bill that are non-legal, even myself, it took me a while to kind of get through it and to process it. We're undoing that, all of those defenses. So we have to go back through and take all of those out. We have to shift the paradigm, so to speak, so that, okay, now it's legal to have, and that's why the bill looks a little bit arduous, I think, and
It
it's
is.
confusing
Yeah.
people. Some folks out in East Tennessee, there was an article recently that kind of bashed the bill, but when you then talk to the person and show them, well, this is what we're doing, we're sort of undoing this inverted paradigm, then they go, oh, okay, well, now I understand the reason for this, that, this. We're just undoing all of those defenses and making it legal to possess.
Where this is, we've got 11 minutes to go here, but there's so many things I think our viewers need to understand. This is not something that's outlandish, it's crazy. We're not, wanting to turn into the streets of Baghdad or whatever.
No, I've been there, and we don't want to do that.
The places that this has occurred, bad things have not happened, right?
That's correct.
That's
So,
correct.
all the states that pass this,
If you take what we
it
did
doesn't happen. Bad things don't happen.
in 2014, we passed a bill in the state of Tennessee that allowed anyone who could legally possess a weapon to keep a loaded firearm in their car without having to have a
Right.
permit.
Right.
And again, have we seen anything on the news
Right.
that has said, oh, it's been terrible, we've had people murdered over parking spaces,
Right.
and that last loaf of bread, the last time they thought it was going to snow, two
Right.
guys shot each other. No, that has not occurred.
And in fact, as we go historically back through history, every time there was some loosening of gun restrictions, we've heard these same things.
Correct.
When the permits were first allowed, well, there's going to be shootouts in the streets. It didn't happen. Used to, you couldn't walk into a little Speedy Mart where they sold alcohol. If they sold beer there, you had to leave your gun in the car with your kid playing a video game before you could walk in and get a loaf of bread, because for some reason, if they serve alcohol or sell it, you can't walk in there. Well, they changed that law. Well, if you do that, there's going to be shootouts in the street. And then you couldn't go into restaurants, even if you didn't drink, if they served alcohol. They changed that. Well, there's going to be people dying. And each time the progressives and the liberals made that claim, the law changed, and each time nothing happened. But now, here they are, still, the same
if you
thing.
go to those states that Richard mentioned earlier, 10 to 15 or 13 to 15, however you look at it specifically, none of these things, none of the predictions have ever come true. And what's a little bit, frustrating to me or insulting in a way, I think New Hampshire.
Just passed.
New
New
Hampshire. Just, a northern state, and here we are, the patron state of shooting stuff, and you got to go and get a permit and take a class and prove that you're safe with the weapon. But what's interesting, we give reciprocity to people, I believe it's Alabama, and they don't require training.
They don't even have to,
So-
they just go buy a gun and carry it.
So in
And
Alabama,
they come to Tennessee.
that's exactly right. An
they get a
Alabama
permit.
can get their permit and then come into Tennessee and carry concealed without ever having any training. The inconsistency of that is just frustrating.
And to your point, this is something I think is very pertinent for the conversation. They'll hang this bill with the fiscal night and say, oh, it's going to cost the state of Tennessee a huge amount of money because if we go to constitutional carry, nobody's going to perfect their permit anymore. That's incorrect. We have looked pretty strenuously at the situation in states which have gone from a non-constitutional carry to one that is. There's no perceptive reduction in the number of people who keep their permits for the simple fact that one of the reasons we get them is for travel across states where reciprocity allows us to carry them in these other states. Like me, I travel quite a bit. I carry my firearm legally on the airplane so that when I get there, I can be armed in that state. I'm not going to desist from having my permit. I'm going to keep it. But the single mother who's working 60 hours a week and she's doing her best to provide health care and sustenance for her children can't afford $500 for a class and the time off to go take the permit. That's the person that the Constitution was originally set out to protect. And yet we have, as a government and the people, said, no, we're going to cost you $500 before you can enjoy that right.
And the bad thing about the argument that's being made, they're not supposed to profit off gun ownership anyway, right? And so the whole argument that, well, we're going to lose revenue from this, they shouldn't even be profiting off of a constitutional right in the first place.
Right.
So,
And it looks like we in the South need to learn lessons from, you go to Chicago and Detroit, they make more and more laws, and is it safer?
No,
No.
absolutely not.
So-
the
so
bad
let's
guy's
stop.
always going to have a gun, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you can make all the laws you want, and the bad guy's going to have the gun. It's the good guy that needs to be armed to stop that bad guy, as we talked about
Right.
earlier.
And that's a great point, and it's a compelling argument for Senator Green in advancing the bill, is that when you look at the fact that 60% of the states allow open carry with no background check, no training, no fee, just you legally possess it, you can carry. When you look at the crime data and the accidental injury data from those states, you're not more likely to be shot by an individual legally possessing a firearm with an accidental shooting or an intentional shooting in those states than you are in Tennessee, which has one of the highest permit fees in the nation. We have an unnecessary training requirement. We have to send you off and have you fingerprinted and photographed. It's about a 3-day process. But it doesn't make us any safer. But yet it profited the state $52 million from 2008 to 2014. And so if the data shows there's no safety benefit, set aside the Constitution. If there's no real tangible safety benefit, then why are we doing it?
Yeah.
And for Senator Green to be willing, with all the other stuff he's got going on, working in ERs, running a business, serving as a state senator, it's a huge commitment of his time and in his family, and he's willing to also carry a bill like this that's complicated, that's a fundamental cornerstone for conservatives, and yet the administration and the establishment have defeated it the last few years.
Right. And very quickly, you are considering or in the process of running for governor.
Sure, we've taken the next step, turned in our finance paperwork to raise money to run for governor of Tennessee in 2018. We'll have a big kickoff announcement coming up, sometime after session. But we just basically took the next step and put the paperwork together to put the accounts together to raise money for governor.
Now, I'll ask you now, once you become governor, are you going to change your mind?
No.
Okay.
No. Listen,
Okay.
I went to fight in Iraq and Afghanistan for our Constitution. And the oath I took at 17 on the plane at West Point was to defend, support and defend the Constitution of the United States. I'm not changing that stance at any point in my lifetime.
Great. The reason I said that is that there was a governor in Tennessee who, was it at a TFA meeting?
It was.
And we have tape. We got the video working, couldn't get the audio to show, who stated, how many years ago?
2010.
On tape in 2010, that when elected, if someone brought this bill to him for constitutional carry, he would sign it.
That's correct.
And why is that not happening? Why is it that we can't get this law passed? Looks like you just, Senate passes it, House passes it, we go.
I think it's a misunderstanding. I don't think anyone has any intentions to deprive anyone of their constitutional rights. I think it's a misguided and misinformed position that they're taking, that as you release these regulations, people will be less safe. But if you look at the statistics, it is absolutely the opposite. Where these mass shootings are occurring are in gun-free zones. And where bad guys are stopped by good guys with guns are where guns are allowed. And it's just time that people look at the facts and make decisions based on the facts and not off what someone else is scaring up about feelings.
Yeah.
Because if you want to protect people, you allow them to protect themselves.
Absolutely. And we tape our program on a college campus. As I came in today, I asked security, what kind of security do you have here? Because I wanted to find out if they have armed security. The answer, I can't tell you. You have to talk to the director. So I don't even know if they have armed security here or not. But I do know that unless someone here is a sworn officer, we can't protect ourselves here. Now, I won't ask you if you're carrying, because I don't want to get anybody arrested. But if we were to hear shots fired outside this building, we have to just sort of hunker down and wait. But that's not the way we, as good old Southern men, ought to be. We ought to be able to go out and face the challenge outside this door if we hear a challenge out there. And that's what our founders told us. Our founders said the security of a free state depends on us being able to face that challenge. Foreign, domestic, the old Red Dawn thing where people come parachuting in, we don't expect that to happen. But we do have people coming into our country right now that are trying to harm us.
There are people that are our own citizens who have been radicalized and have killed Americans. So it's not just people that are coming in from the outside. And like I said, sort of at the beginning of this thing, we're back to where we started. It's the armed citizen that is the last line of defense. A guy by the name of Ralph Bristol came up with this statement that said, the Second Amendment is Homeland Security.
Right.
And I genuinely believe that to be true. It's a great quote because it's not only our right now, it's our duty.
Right. Absolutely.
To protect each other. And I'm fighting for this.
Right. Absolutely.
But you made a point about college campuses we can't legally carry here. One thing that I would say is that I pulled into the parking lot. It says that I can't bring a weapon on too, so I did not. People who are law-abiding obey the law. Criminals, by the definition of what they are, do not. And so a question was asked last year in Senate Judiciary when we were talking about this very same thing. One of the senators asked law enforcement, what law do you enforce that keeps criminals from carrying guns? And he stammered and he had no idea, because there are no laws that you can enforce that are going to stop a criminal from carrying a gun. What government can do is stop the law-abiding citizen from being able to provide his own self-protection.
I guess that's in closing here. We've only got about 30 seconds left. I appreciate the great work that
Thanks
you're
for
doing.
having us on.
Mark, wish you well in your run for governor.
Thanks.
Tennessee Firearms, top notch. I guess to sum up, constitutional carry isn't necessarily just allowing citizens to carry. It's saying that we don't want just criminals to be armed. We want everyone to be able to protect themselves against threats. Thank you for listening. Let everybody else know about what we're trying to do at Veritas Populi. Thank you.